One thing I wanted to talk about is yesterday I went to jury duty, and when I was done with jury duty, I was in the neighborhood of the museum. So I went to the museum. Where's my pictures? There we go. Let's go with. All right. So I went to the art museum and I looked at the Kehinde Wiley exhibit. And if you don't know who Kehinde Wiley is, let me back up and let's go and take a look at Kehinde Wiley. Kehende. Oops. Kehinde. There we go. All right, Kehinde Wiley is an African American artist, and he did the official portrait of Barack Obama. And he does what I love about his work is that it has all these patterns in it, and I use his artwork when I teach pattern. But another reason why I love his artwork is that he is a fan of art history, and he looks at art history and then recreates it for the African American because most of art history is white centered. And so he repackages it, and he has his own take. He's trying to say his own message through recreating works of art. So, for example, the one there on the right with the man on the horse, we are going to be seeing that similar artwork. Let's see. All right, we're going to see that same artwork later on this semester. And so Kehinde Wiley takes these images and repackages them. For example, here is, I just told this class the story of Judith and Holofernes, did I not? All right, so you know the story of Judith and Holofernes. So while Kehinde Wiley does a version of Judith and Holofernes, seen here. So he is an excellent artist to reinterpret art history. Can you put your phone right in there? Thank you. All right, and then the other thing I wanted to share with you. So there is an exhibition at the museum of Kehinde Wiley's artwork, and it's in addition to the cost of entering. By the way, the museum is free on Thursdays, and the Kehinde Wiley. Come on, there we go. The Kehinde Wiley exhibit is $10. So it's a separate one. It is, excuse me, well worth the $10 to go and see it because these are in very dark rooms and the only light is on the artwork. So he has these bronze sculptures. I've told you guys how bronze is made, and he has these giant paintings, and the light is only on the painting. In fact, the light, you look at the frame of the artwork, and that's where the light ends. So these paintings are absolutely glowing in these dark rooms. And I photographed this woman standing next to the artworks to show you how incredibly large these artworks are. They are very huge. And another thing that I love about Kehinde Wiley is just how absolutely realistic he paints, and he mixes this pattern painting with realism, and it is absolutely phenomenal. This is bad photos. And these bronze sculptures were so real. As I was looking at this person's face, I totally expected the eyes to open and look at me. So that's where I was yesterday. Look at the realism in the hands. It's just absolutely amazing. All right. So the other thing that I did at the museum is I went up to the Renaissance room and I took some selfies with some Renaissance art because we're doing Renaissance right now. So do you guys remember the birth of Venus, all right, where they had Venus was standing in the middle, standing on the shell, and the people were coming in from the sides. That was done by an artist, Sandro Botticelli. Well, here is a Sandro Botticelli painting at the museum. And I don't know if we've done Tintoretto yet. Have we done Tintoretto? All right, so we might see him today if we get to his artwork. But the one on top is Tintoretto. The one on the bottom is Rubens, who has the same birthday as me, and we'll be looking at Rubens very soon. And then there's another Sandro Botticelli painting, right? The Birth of Venus, same artist. And here we have the Holy Family. All right. Oh, and then there was that's for something else. All right. So that was my time yesterday. And all right. This is going to be the first time in history that we have a reaction against something. The first time in art history. Art history from the beginning of time till now, the Renaissance, has been a progression that artists get better and better and better. We had a couple of times where we went, back in our skills, like with the late antiquity and then the medieval era and Gothic era. But typically, as time went along, artists got better at making things, or it's just a natural progression to improve, and they just get more skilled. Um, Almost never has it been a reaction to the previous style, but we have that here. The artists are consciously reacting to the style that's around. They're looking at the current style and they say, we don't like that. We're going to do something different. And this is mannerism. All right. It's the first time artists do that. And we will see this happen again and again and again as we go out through this semester. There will always then be a backlash. So we have this, and I will illustrate a pendulum that swings back and forth as artists then react to each other, and artists react to the previous group of artists. So this is an intense reaction to the perfection of the High Renaissance. The Renaissance was so perfect, there was nowhere to go but to do something really different. And sometimes with mannerism, something is wrong. Something's wrong in these two pictures. If you look at the one on the left, does it look like something's wrong with her body? All right. And by the way, does anybody know who that is? That's a goddess. Demeter is the goddess of, yeah, and is that the Roman name for Artemis? Right. So Artemis, and I thought it was Diana, but all right. So yeah, Demeter and Artemis is the god of hunting. So if you want to have a good hunt, you would pray to Artemis, and then you would have a good hunt. All right. So what is the attribute that led you to believe this? Right, the bow and arrow. Right. But look at her proportions. Look at the anatomy. Does it look like her neck is like twisted around like a doll's head? The shoulder is in the wrong place, and the hips are like, so the hips and the legs look like a profile, and then the back look like it's turned like towards us. We see more of the back, and then the head is turned around. It just looks like somebody's taken like a Barbie doll and kind of twisted it all around, and it doesn't make any sense. All right, and then on the right, the figures, and I'll discuss the painting on the right in more detail in a little bit. Mannerism is also called the late Renaissance, but it's a period of art that came out of the High Renaissance, heavily influenced by the Renaissance, Their religion and mythology is kind of the same, but the way they go about it is different. And the term mannerism comes from maniera, which means style. All right, so one of the main ways to identify mannerism is poses that look like a broken neck or their arms are out of joint. So one mannerist wrote to another mannerist, and he wrote this. Listen to this quote: "Take a right hand and put it on a left arm." Unquote. So these mannerists are purposefully doing things awkward. There's a reason for it. Another way to identify mannerism is distorted figures. By the way, I bought two Kahindi Wiley books yesterday, and if you want to come and look at these books, I have them up here. All right, so the distorted figures was a popular theme in mannerism. Um, and if you look at the painting on the left, that is a convex mirror. That's a mirror that kind of bows out and gives this fisheye lens look. That was a popular type of mirror at the time, and the Mannerists loved doing self portraits in that convex mirror. On the right, we have this Madonna and Child, which we will look at in more detail later on, but her figure is definitely distorted, and that's done on purpose. All right, another attribute or another thing that Mannerists did is they had an unusual approach to traditional subject matter. What is the subject of this painting? Yeah, that looks like a butcher shop. You have a cow's head, you have a side of beef, you have all these meats hanging. It looks like a butcher shop. Absolutely. And you can even see the butcher shop in the background on the right. All right, it looks like a butcher shop. That is not the subject of this painting. All right, the subject of this painting is back here. And if you zoom in back here, it is a religious subject. It is Mary and Joseph on a donkey with Jesus uh, going to or leaving Bethlehem or going to Bethlehem. All right, I don't know my stories, but it is a religious topic. All right, it is not the butcher shop that it appears to be. All right, that is a purposeful decision that the artist made. And I could easily imagine that this artist gets commissioned, hey, I want to commission you a painting. Oh, okay, yeah, that sounds great. And the guy says, oh, I want you to paint Mary and Joseph going to Bethlehem. It's like, oh, I don't really want to paint that. So he paints it real small in the corner. All right. Another characteristic of mannerism is unnatural skin tones. And then the big one is awkward, unnatural, impossible, and uncomfortable poses. If the artist uses models, these models look very uncomfortable. To hold a pose like that for any length of time, and this guy too. Are we good to go? Need more time? All right. I got a 360 view of the Madonna with the long neck, and so I just want you to see the context of the room in which she's. Let's go over here. So if we just look around, that gives you a sense of, whoop, come on, how large this artwork is. And then, all right, in this room, usually they have the natural light. All right, so let's move on and look at Madonna with the long neck. I really like this painting, and uh, I'll go over a couple reasons why I like this painting in a minute. But her anatomy is erroneous. Her anatomy is wrong. It's not realistic, and that's what the Mannerists were moving against. You know, the Renaissance artists worked so hard to get everything perfect, but the Mannerists just wanted to do so. They wanted to be more expressive, and realism is boring. Realism is, maybe exciting in that it's a technical challenge to get it to look, to get your drawing or painting to look exactly like what's in front of you. That's a challenge, but ever since the camera is like, just take a picture of it. Why do you want to, why not express yourself? Show. If you draw something that looks exactly like how you see it, you're not really putting any of yourself into that. You're not, like, if everybody drew exactly what was in front of them, then everybody's drawing would be the same. All right, so it would have no meaning to it. It's just what we see. So these artists are trying to be a lot more expressive. So she has a tiny head and these really large hips. Christ's arm looks dislocated. And look at how long he is. That is not like a regular baby right there. And so let me get my laser pointer, and I want to show. I'll be right back. There is a wonderful, graceful, curving line that goes from her head down her body and into her knee. And for those of you watching this on video, it goes down the head and through the body and down that knee. There's a wonderful curve. You know what? I need to draw that with a line. I'll do that in a second. There is a second curve, right, that goes down this way. And then there's the curve of Christ, like the arm goes up her arm, and then her arm cradles around his shoulder, and there's this wonderful curve that goes across here into to her other knee, and those are beautiful lines that are fun to follow, and that's one of the things I love about this artwork. So I kind of relate to the Mannerists because in my own artwork, I like to draw. I draw a lot of stuff realistically. So in these drawings, I am drawing exactly from the photograph. I try to make it look as close to the photograph as possible. But I find that to be boring, right? It's a challenge to make it look like the photograph, but it's boring. And so these are some of my later works where I just had some fun with the shapes of this. And I just realized when I was talking to my other class that the line on this guy looks a lot like the line on the Madonna with the long neck. And I didn't consciously make that decision, but it could have been in there in my mind when I was, because I just love that line that goes across like that. All right, so on the left we have Madonna with the long neck. That's mannerism, and on the right we have Leonardo da Vinci's Madonna of the Caves. I'll get the title. And I'm just having a brain fart right now. In the background is we're not talking about the background. We're talking about the proportions. So Leonardo da Vinci worked so hard to make the proportions so perfect, but that was what the Mannerists uh, were revolting against. All right, Renaissance artists like Leonardo had perfected naturalism, which is realism. Mannerism is a reaction to that, and the illusionism that made Renaissance art look so realistic is now being used to distort the figures. And distorting the figure for a graceful effect that really could, that reality could not offer. And then also her fingers are impossibly boneless. So they look a little bit weird, right? And really long. All right, we are moving on to Venus, Cupid, Folly, and Time. And this Madonna of the Rocks was the Leonardo painting. Virgin of the Rocks, that's what it is. All right. Okay, so this painting right here, look at the awkward poses of Venus and Cupid. And if we look at the angularness, so this artist, instead of having these flowing body, the previous, like the previous artist, this artist chose to do these very angular poses, and they are very uncomfortable. And look at how Cupid really sticks his butt out, and then the angles of the legs and the shoulders and the heads, like none of this looks comfortable at all. And I want to remind you who these two people are. So Venus and Cupid, Aphrodite and Eros. So Aphrodite is the goddess of, what is she the goddess of? Beauty, yes. And what else? Yes, and marriage and love. All right, she's the goddess of beauty, marriage, and love. And Eros is the god of love. What is the relationship between Eros and Aphrodite or Cupid and Venus? Does anybody know? What's the relationship between them? Venus and Cupid. They are related. Right. Venus is the mother of Eros. And if we look closely, is that not awkward? All right. There's a little bit of tongue there. All right. So we have not only is it an awkward pose, but what they're doing is quite awkward. And then, like the attribute of Venus, the reason why we know it's Venus is that she is holding the golden apple. And I told you that story of the golden apple, that this is the apple that started the Trojan War. All right. Above her is Father Time, and he as time moves along, it uncovers truths. So he is pulling back this curtain, he's pulling back this blanket to uncover the truth. Down in the lower right of the painting, we have these two masks, and the masks are a symbol of deceit. And this child here, this really weird child who seems a little bit mischievous, is about to throw a bunch of flowers onto Venus and Cupid. And he has, this is folly, right? Do you guys know what folly is? It's like a foolish action, or it's a foolish way of life. And then behind him, my notes say, what the hell is that? All right, so she has a child's face. In her hand, she is holding a honeycomb, and then and she has lion's legs. She has a tail that comes around, and at the end of the tail is a scorpion's stinger. All right. So I ask again, what the hell is that? All right. This weird creature. There's the scorpion stinger. And that scorpion stinger denotes pain, and the honeycomb denotes pleasure. Again, there's Father Time. He has an hourglass on his back as time goes. And then over on the left side, I'm going to go back here. There we go. Over here on the left side is syphilis. And so we're going to get a close look at syphilis. There she is. All right. So syphilis is a consequence of folly and love, like foolish love. So, is a consequence of pleasure of love. And love accompanied by envy and deceit and inconsistency is foolish, and lovers will discover its folly in time. That's the whole message of this painting. So if you're hiding things and there's inconsistency, the relationship is doomed to fail, and you just might get syphilis, which was a problem at the time. We will talk more about syphilis this semester. This is part sex ed class as well. All right. So I'm going to show you a huge difference in style between the Renaissance and the Mannerism. On the left, we have a Renaissance painting by Raphael, and look how nice it is. Look how well composed it is. And we have that triangular composition. We have the very pleasant background, and it's so quiet and nice. And then in the Mannerist painting, we have such chaos and weirdness and these harsh angles and just like what is going on, and we don't really know, and it's just so strange. And that is a big difference between Renaissance and Mannerism. All right, so in Florence, I don't know if I talked about the Vasari. Yes, when we talked about the Medici, I talked about the Vasari corridor. And so that is the elevated walkway between the Palazzo Vecchio and the Medici Palace that the Medici would walk and avoid the common folk because they were better than the common folk. And they would also, it was a way to avoid assassination. Well, the corridor also it goes through some buildings, and one of the buildings that it passes through is the Santa Felicita Church. And here is the Vasari corridor up here, and then here is the church. And if you go into that door right down in the bottom there, just to the right, you see that window. In that little room just to the right is where our artwork is going to be. It's just like when we went into the big cathedral and we looked to the right and there was the Pietà. So same thing, where there's this little chapel to the right. But before we get there, I just want to show this: the Vasari corridor went through this chapel, and so the Medici had their own little room to participate in the ceremonies going on in the church. All right, and so we can see that room up there, and just below it is the Capponi Chapel, where our next artwork is. All right, so here is our artwork, the Entombment of Christ, or the Capponi altarpiece. All right, so again, we have these awkward, unnatural, impossible, and uncomfortable poses. And then we also have a lack of illusion of space. The Renaissance artists gave us all that space. Before the Renaissance, all that space was crammed flat, and we was like a department store display. But now the Renaissance opened up all that space, and the Mannerist says, no, we don't want that space anymore. So everything is crammed to the front, and we don't even really know where they are. There's a little cloud in the background, but the sky doesn't look like a sky. So this is very strange. And then these weird poses, especially the guy down at the bottom, there's his neck isn't really in the right place. His neck is pushed way forward. It doesn't the anatomy doesn't quite match up. And then there's this, how much would you say that guy weighs? He's like a medium build, all right? So he's maybe like almost like 150 to 200 pounds. And then we have a dead body that he's holding up, maybe another 150 to 200 pounds. And then does it look like there's any weight on his feet? It's all much like the Sandro Botticelli Venus, where everybody looks weightless. And so we have this weird sense of weightlessness in this painting. There's also um, a problem with what is this a painting of? What scene is depicted here? And so some artists are asking that question, or some art historians are asking that question, like what scene is this? And other art historians are saying there's the clues that are normally in paintings like this are all missing. For example, is this the throne of mercy? No, it's not the throne of mercy because it doesn't have God and the Holy Spirit. It has the Son, but usually the throne of mercy looks a little bit different than this. Is this the deposition? This is where they take Christ off of the cross. And no, it's not, because the normal deposition would have a cross and it would have a ladder in it. All right, is this a pietà? And no, it's not a pietà because he's not on her lap. He's on the back of this other guy. And is this a lamentation? And no, it's not a lament. There's not enough grief in this. Like, nobody really looks like they're grieving. They're not in the grieving poses. So it's not a lamentation. And the other question is, is he about to be lifted onto her lap, or are they lifting him off of her lap? There's no way to tell. And is this an entombment? And that's the closest thing that they can figure, because it's the closest. It looks closest to an entombment, but there's no tomb here like there usually is in an entombment painting. So it's not really an entombment either. So, but this is what they settled on, that it is the title of this, not by the artist, but that art historians have put onto this, is The Entombment of Christ. All right. Moving on, we're going to go to Venice. What is the unique thing about Venice? How is Venice different than most places in the world? Right, the canals, right, the water. So here we have, it looks like a floating church, all right, but we have this church on this island here, and we're going to go inside this church and take a look at an artwork. So if we go, magnificent. I'm going to take the guy's comments out. And so, all right, so he's walked up to the altar, and there's a painting to the left, and then there's a painting to the right. And the painting to the right is our painting that we're going to look at, The Last Supper. And then he's going to walk around to the back of it to give you a sense of we're now behind the altar, looking up at the painting of The Last Supper on the left. All right, so I'm going to stop the video there. And all right, there's our Last Supper. And if we get closer to it, by the way, at the beginning of this today, I took a picture with a Tintoretto. So this is that artist. All right. So this is The Last Supper. And it's the same story as that of Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. You remember how he was Christ was in the center, looked like a triangle. And we got 6 minutes. I think we can finish right here. So, and He had three groups of threes to the left and groups of threes to the right. It was all balanced. And if you could take an imaginary line down the middle, it was equal on both sides. But here in this one, it's much different. Like the Christ is not, while he's close to the center of the picture, but he's not the center of the disciples. And we have this, the table is now going back into space, and then it's mostly dark. We can see how dark this painting is, and the only lights seem to be coming from Christ's head and the lamp above. But and he has these like angels flying up above. But we can compare these two paintings where, and again, this is such a mannerist painting. We have such chaos going on that it's not so nice and neat as the Renaissance. Renaissance is just so pleasant. It's so nice. Everything is organized. Whereas in the mannerism, we have such chaos. All right. Well, that will finish us up for this part. We have one more section of chapter 22 to do, and then we will. I think 22 is our last chapter of the unit, so the test is coming up. All right. Are there any questions about anything at all? All right. Yeah, you can get your phones.